Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. London's Southend Airport will remain closed until further notice after a 12-metre plane crashed in a fireball on Sunday afternoon. Essex police said the plane caught fire just before 4 p.m, but officials have not yet confirmed any casualty numbers. German Defence Minister Boris Pistorius is in Washington to meet US Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth for talks on American arms supplies to Ukraine, missile deployment and US troops in Europe. The visit comes as Germany takes a bigger role in NATO's largest military build-up since the Cold War, after years of defence underspending. Russia's local administration said on Monday that Ukrainian drones attacked a training center at the Russia-held Zaporizhia nuclear plant using 3 UAVs. The administration claimed there was no critical damage, while Reuters could not independently verify the report. China's Vice President Han Zheng told India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar that the two countries should steadily advance practical cooperation. Speaking in Beijing, Han said both sides must respect each other's concerns and promote stable development of bilateral relations. At least 30 people have been killed in clashes between Bedouin, Sunni tribes and Druze fighters in the southern Syrian city of Swida, Syria's interior ministry said. The violence follows escalating tensions between minorities since the collapse of the Assad regime, with a new Islamic-led government struggling to restore order. President Trump says he hopes to get the Gaza situation straightened out in the next week, while his envoy Witkoff confirmed he will meet senior Qatari officials in New Jersey on Sunday. The Witkoff added he is hopeful about making progress on a ceasefire to end the ongoing conflict. The United States military and Panamanian police conducted new exercises to safeguard the strategic Panama Canal. The drills come amid rising tensions over alleged Chinese influence in the region and the critical trade route security. The European Union said it will extend its pause on countermeasures to US tariffs until early August, while pushing for a negotiated deal. This comes after President Trump threatened a 30% tariff on most EU and Mexican imports starting on August the 1st, giving countries weeks to strike framework agreements. Okay, we have some breaking news to start with coming out of the Indo-Pacific. A strong earthquake measuring at a magnitude 7 has struck Indonesia's Tanimbar Islands region. The shallow quake hit earlier today, according to seismologists. There are no immediate reports of damage or casualties as of now, but authorities are monitoring for possible aftershocks or tsunami risks. Indonesia sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire, as it is called, and is prone to frequent seismic activity. Local officials have urged residents to remain alert as assessments continue in the affected areas, and we will bring you all updates in regards to that developing situation. However, we move to Europe for our first story, where London's Southend Airport in Essex has shut down all operations until further notice after a small aircraft crashed at the site. The plane was a Beech B200 Super King aircraft that normally carries 12 passengers. The passenger plane going from Southend in the UK to Lelystad in the Netherlands. Essex police said that they were called just after 4 p.m. local time following reports of a collision involving a 12-metre aircraft. Emergency services, including police and air accident investigators, remain at the scene of the crash. In a statement posted on X, Southend Airport confirmed that all inbound and outbound flights have been cancelled so far. The airport is located about 35 miles east of central London. The East of England Ambulance Service said it dispatched 4 ambulances along with other emergency vehicles to the scene. Authorities have not yet confirmed how many people were on board the aircraft. The airport's website lists at least 5 cancelled international flights following the incident. We're now joined by Peter Baum, who's the foreign editor of the Weekly Blitz. He joins us live from London. Peter, we saw the visuals of this that came in last night. A fireball would be an accurate description, as eyewitnesses have described. What do we know so far about this accident, and have authorities? What have authorities so far confirmed? Peter, can you hear me? Okay, I believe we're having some technical issues. Peter, can you hear me? Apologies.
I can hear you, sir, no problem.
Okay, brilliant. Peter, what do we know so far about this crash that happened in Essex yesterday? As we've said previously, eyewitnesses called it a fireball. Video footage would say that that is quite accurate. What do we know so far about this crash, Peter?
Okay, sir. Well, I actually live in the area. I live in Southend-on-Sea, which is about 35 miles east of London. And Southend Airport is an overflow airport for the 2 major London airports, Heathrow, Gatwick, and to a lesser extent, London City Airport. So as soon as I was aware of this incident, I drove down there. The emergency services had cordoned off the area, quite rightly so, but they weren't letting in any press or commentators or even family members of those who were waiting to fly off to various locations. And indeed, all those people in the airport had been ushered out by that time. Now, as far as we know, the plane had recently arrived in from Croatia, had landed at Southend Airport for a couple of hours on its way back to the Netherlands. It's owned by a Dutch airline. What is unusual about this crash? We know that it crashed on takeoff, but what hasn't come forward yet, and this is very, very unusual, there has been no confirmation at all of the number of people on board and the fatalities or injuries. Now, if you remember to the incident that you covered very comprehensively, the Air India crash, literally within a couple of hours of that terrible disaster, the Indian authorities and all the administrative organisations had identified to 1 or 2% the number of people on board and the number of fatalities. This is a very small plane that can only take maximum 12 people, and yet the local authorities here and the emergency services have not identified yet any of the fatalities or injuries, and this is 12 hours after the crash. That is in itself very, very unusual, and we don't know whether it's just incompetence or whether there's some more, let's say, mysterious or significant reasons underlying that. We just don't know.
Yes, exactly. As you said, there's obviously limited information. It has been just 12 hours since the crash, not even the casualty number, as you have previously said. But what role are the Air Accidents Investigation Branch and the Essex Police now playing in this investigation?
Well, again, I knew that I was coming on this morning at 7 a.m. my time, so at 5 I drove down there to see. It's literally a 20-minute drive from where I am. Again, everything was cordoned off, no access whatsoever. Tried to get information from local sources, of which I have met several, and there's just been a clampdown on information. Tried to phone up my local MP, who I know reasonably well, who's been interviewed on British media. Again, can't get access to him. So I hate to believe in conspiracy theories, and it's a tragic accident, obviously, for all concerned, but there is just such a lack of information that I cannot, with my hand on my heart, be honest with you and the NewsX
Of
world
course.
viewers and listeners to say, look, this is what's happened, this is the cause, etc., etc. What we do know are these planes are they're called the Land Rover of the skies. They're very often used to transport very light freight, and in many cases medical equipment, such as for people needing organ transplants. The organs themselves are very often transported on these planes. So they're a useful, very useful short-haul carrier for light freight. But again, I have such little information, even though I live in the area, even though I'm close to the authorities and close to the, let's say, the powers that be. But there's just such a lack of information that anything other than what I tell you is pure speculation on my part, because the lack of information is quite well. There is no information flow. So I'm staggered, frankly.
Of course, Peter, obviously great not to speculate, but what's the feeling after this crash? Obviously, it was compelling visuals coming out of the incident. What's the feeling in the region that you live in currently?
Great question. You see, the airport is a major source of income for this local economy. Southend is a coastal town. In the 50s and 60s, it used to be a major seaside resort that was packed with holidaymakers every day of the summer holidays, and more recently has lost that attraction as people, as you know, go on holidays to short-haul destinations in France and Spain, Malta, Cyprus, etc. But Southend recently has developed this airport, which, as I said before, is an overflow for the major London airports, and it has been used very frequently every day of the week, and even in the winter they have flights to some sunnier climes. So for the local economy, it will be absolutely devastating that the airport is currently closed and no information whatsoever as to when it will reopen. Now, I guess it may handle maybe 2,000 or 3,000 passengers a day in its peak periods, and all those passengers have now had to reschedule, cancel flights, get in touch with their travel agents, or if they booked it themselves, make alternative arrangements, etc. Because all the flights that were scheduled to go, obviously at the end of yesterday, today, tomorrow, possibly for another few days ahead, will all have to be cancelled, and those passengers will have to make alternative arrangements. And of course, as I said, it's so important for the local economy that the local hoteliers will lose bookings of people wanting to stay overnight, the restaurants, etc., etc. So for a city such as Southend, it's going to have a devastating blow. And watching the pictures of the when the plane crashed and the fireball, it's actually quite shocking for the area. This is the first time in my lifetime, and I've lived here all my life, that something like this has happened. Quite devastating, quite shocking, and again, quite staggering that there hasn't been more information flow concerning the crash.
Peter Baum, thank you so much for joining us. Some really valuable insight there, and we will bring you those figures when they do eventually come out. We now move on to another European-related development. Russia says Ukrainian drones struck a training center at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant on Sunday evening. 3 drones were used in the attack, but no critical damage was reported. The incident comes just after the IAEA reported hearing hundreds of small arms rounds near the plant. Kiev reports heavy fighting as well in the Pokrovsk region and says it has repelled several Russian attacks across the front line. Meanwhile, President Trump is set to unveil an aggressive new weapons package for Ukraine, including long-range missiles. Russia claims it destroyed 2 US-made Patriot launchers. We're now joined... Okay, we will... apologies, we're facing some technical issues, but we are joined by a guest. This comes as President Trump seemingly turns his attention to Ukraine and Russia once again, and sends Ukraine Patriot missiles, and Russia claims to have destroyed 2 of these. Ukrainian drones attacked a training center near the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant yesterday evening. The Russian installed administration of the Russian-held nuclear plant in Ukraine. There's a statement here from Telegram. The enemy used 3 unmanned aerial vehicles, the administration said on the Telegram messaging app. It added that no critical damage was reported. This information comes from the Reuters news agency, and it said it could not independently verify this Russian report, which is very important. However, the report comes a day after the United Nations nuclear watchdog, otherwise known as the IAEA, said that it heard hundreds of rounds of small arms fire late on Saturday at that same plant. Russian forces have seized this plant in the first weeks of the 2022 invasion. Okay, we now move on. China's exports gained momentum in June while imports rebounded as companies rushed shipments to capitalize on a fragile tariff truce between Beijing and Washington ahead of an August deadline. Customs data released today showed China's exports rose 5.8% year-on-year, outperforming forecasts, while imports climbed 1.1% following a decline in May. Trade ties appeared to stabilize in June after talks in Geneva revived a delicate agreement between the world's 2 largest economies. China's rare earth exports surged 32% from May, signaling that recent agreements may be easing supply chains. China faces an August the 12th deadline to reach a long-term deal with the White House amid growing trade pressures from both the United States and the European Union. My apologies, we seem to have some more technical issues. So we have trade tensions rising between the 2 countries. My apologies. China's exports have gained momentum this month, while imports have rebounded as companies have rushed these shipments to capitalize on a fragile tariff truce between Beijing and Washington ahead of an August deadline. Customs data released today showed China's exports rose 5.8% in year-on-year, outperforming forecasts, while imports climbed 1.1% following this decline in May. Trade ties appeared to stabilize in June after talks in Geneva revived a delicate agreement between the world's 2 largest economies. And may I reiterate, a delicate agreement. China's rare earth exports surged 32% from May, signaling that recent agreements may be easing supply chains. China faces an August the 12th deadline to reach this long-term deal with the White House amid growing trade pressures from both the United States and the European Union. We're now joined by Dr. Sanjay Kumar, who's a journalist at the Korea Herald. He joins us live from the South Korean capital of Seoul. Thank you very much, Dr. Kumar, for joining us on the program. Dr. Kumar, what are your thoughts about the fact that Chinese exports have risen another 5.8%, and this is given the fragile trade relationship now with the United States and China? What is your current views about these trade relations between these 2 nations?
The trade relations, of course, are not in good shape. It's not a new story, but if we see the current announcements of current announcements sent to 14 countries, then some sort of collective voice is likely to come. We will see from 1st of August that what exactly is going to happen. But already in this part of the world, in East Asia, Japan and Korea is uh, trying to voice not anger but regret, and as well as they are ready to negotiate. Especially if you see the comments of South Korean Trade Minister, he has said that now the real game has started, which means they are ready to negotiate under the roof of give and take things. When it comes to China-US things, it is always tensed. Few years ago, it was seen as a trade war. Now it is being seen as a tariff war. So that means like economically both countries are at war front, but negotiations are undergoing, and recently on the sidelines of ASEAN forum as well, those things were discussed. So we are going to see some really tough negotiations in coming days.
Yes, Dr. Kumar. We now move on to our next story. Staying in the region, South Korea's Trade Minister Yeo Han-koo has said a framework trade deal with the United States could be reached before the August the 1st deadline, according to local media reports. Yeo told reporters that Seoul may be prepared to offer greater access to its agriculture markets as part of the broader trade talks, adding that a strategic choice may be needed for sensitive farm and livestock sectors. He said it may be necessary to accept some American demands that could lead to domestic regulatory changes, but noted that a complete treaty in just 20 days would be unrealistic. Instead, an agreement in principle could be reached by the deadline, with details to be negotiated later. Yeo also expressed concerns to US officials about industry-specific tariffs, including those on semiconductors, autos and steel. He noted that considerable progress has been made on industrial cooperation, including in strategic sectors such as artificial intelligence. Trump had yesterday said that South Korea wanted to make a deal right away, but it did not provide any further details. South Korea is seeking to avoid a 25% tariff set to take effect on August the 1st. We're once again joined by Dr. Sanjay Kumar, who joins us from the South Korean capital to discuss this in further detail. Dr. Kumar, what are the hopes for South Korea what is the hopes for South Korea to get out of this trade deal? What is the feeling around Donald Trump's possible upcoming 25% tariff that could be imposed on August the 1st?
There is a panic among the Korean people and businesses here, because being a trading and export oriented nation, people here have not very good sentiments about this tariff thing, because what Trump sees and what Korean people see is very, very different. According to Trump, he thinks that this trade deficit, which has been a huge bone of contention while dealing with Korea and Japan, although other countries also have trade deficit, but he had been continuously highlighting Japan and Korea, because Japan has like almost $69 billion trade deficit, and Korea also is not far, is just very close at $66 billion. So from US perspective, in their economic interest and national interest, this trade deficit somehow has to be minimized, and Trump has to be accountable to his voters and his supporters, because his narrative in the elections was that. But from South Korean perspective, if we see, agricultural products are already facing a lot of problems. Here the farmers had been making lots of hue and cry when last time, few years ago, when US beef exports came into picture of this US Korea, under this US Korea FTA. So the situation is somewhat similar to that times, and in any case, farmers here and the politicians here do not want to offend the Korean farmers and the Korean people as well. If you see the sectors like semiconductor, automobiles and all, Korea is very much dependent on US, because huge exports go there. And in long run, because Korea exports to China also some of the semiconductors aspect, it is, both from both the sides, it is going to affect Korea in like both ways. So now Korean government is trying its best to somehow come up with some strategy and try to diversify some of the issues which is going to be in the negotiation. For example, like US Korea manufacturing partnership, Renaissance partnership, they want to bring such kind of elements into this trade deal so that uh, so that from one side they can pay some tariffs, but on the other side they can get some benefits through manufacturing and shipbuilding industries and get more new businesses. This is South Korean perspective. Otherwise, it will be only only give initiative, like no take initiative. So give and take initiative has to be achieved. This is how South Korea is seeing. If you bring Japan, although although Japan has also been talking since a couple of years, their prime minister also went there to have such negotiations. They have invested as well. But apart from all that, nothing concrete has been achieved. But South Korea wants to achieve something concrete and in at an early time. Like speed also matters here, because if Japan concludes it first, then also it would send a very not positive but not very negative signal, kind of setback kind of signal to Korean politicians. And here the opposition can also voice anger against this, that look, Japan has concluded this, but we are still doing, and it would be under pressure like situation. So things are not going in a very easy direction right now. But South Korean Trade Ministry and the entire government is really set to negotiate, and they are making lots of strategies, and they are trying to activate various communication channels with the Trump administration.
Yes, Dr. Kumar, we now move over to another Indo-Pacific tariff development where Thailand is thinking about cutting tariffs to zero on more US imports, the country's finance minister said today. The move comes as Thailand is trying to avoid a 36% US tariff that could start if a deal isn't reached by August the 1st. Finance Minister P. Chai Chung Hava Jira also said the government is planning to offer 200 billion baht, which is around 6.1 billion US dollars in soft loans to help local businesses deal with the impact of any new tariffs. We're now once again joined as we continue bringing you more updates in regards to tariffs. Donald Trump says that these tariffs will be brought in on August the 1st, and we will bring you all the updates in regards to that. Hopefully we are going to solve these technical issues and bring Dr. Kumar back to discuss this in further detail. Okay, I believe we have to move on now. South Korea is facing a 36% tariff on August the 1st if it doesn't reach a deal with the United States. Dr. Kumar joins us once again to discuss this further. Dr. Kumar, how likely is it that Thailand's proposal to cut tariffs to zero on more US imports will be enough to avoid the threatened 36% tariff here?
This can be enough, but given that the US administration accepts it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what do you think, what specific American goods might benefit from Thailand's zero tariff move, and which Thai industries could also feel a pinch?
I think the raw materials which is being exported to US can serve like a better trade deal. And from US side, Thailand is a very tourist-centric country, and many tourists have to come as well. So from there they can receive and they can somehow balance. But on the other hand, some financial goods as well as raw materials. These two we should take into consideration right now.
Dr. Sanjay Kumar, thank you so much for your insight and joining us on the programme. We now move back over to the Middle East, where an aide to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is facing potential indictment on security charges related to the alleged leaking of top-secret military information during Israel's war in Gaza. Jonatan Urich, Netanyahu's close advisor, is accused of leaking sensitive details to the German newspaper Bild. The leak reportedly aimed to influence public opinion about Netanyahu and the deaths of 6 Israeli hostages in Gaza in August of 2024. Urich denies the allegations, and Netanyahu has dismissed the investigation as a political witch hunt. The case is under further legal review, with hearings pending. This development comes amidst ongoing indirect negotiations between Israel and Hamas in Doha for a potential ceasefire. We're now joined by Shruti Dasgupta, who's an international affairs expert. She joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Shruti, for joining us on the programme. What does this say about the state of Benjamin Netanyahu's government? We've seen controversy, we've seen scandal in regards to his internal team. That includes his security officials a lot of the time in regards to the war in Gaza. What are your thoughts in this recent update? There's an Israeli aide, a direct aide to the Prime Minister, faces in potential indictment on security charges related to leaking of top-secret military information.
Greetings. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course.
I view this as part of the internal politics of Israel. We can see that the opposition is building pressure case by case on Bibi Netanyahu and his team. As part of coalition government, although right-wing, he has put his wars on front foot, and the safety of the hostages is rather compromised due to his hard stance. So out of the 6 people that were slain, 4 were part of the exchange program that was at that time in August 2024 under discussion with Hamas for release. So for a lot of people, the death of hostages is now becoming Netanyahu's bullishness about Hamas and his stance regarding it. So Israel itself is divided into 2 parts. One part demands hostages first, the other part demands demolition of Hamas first. So Benjamin Netanyahu stays under a lot of pressure, and these particular cases keep adding up to the public perception that Netanyahu is not a competent leader and would probably end up making Israelis lose a lot more than they gain by obliterating Hamas and the other proxy state actors of Iran than they would actually gain from continuing to keep the man in power. So the internal politics of Israel is showing that Netanyahu is no longer in favor.
Yes, Shruti, we now stay on the region. However, we move over to Syria, where fierce clashes between Bedouin tribes and Druze fighters in southern Syria have left at least 37 people dead. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says 27 Druze, including 2 children, and 10 Bedouins were killed in the swelling violence in Sweda. Nearly 50 others are reportedly injured. The situation remains tense as fighting continues. This is one of the deadliest outbreaks in the area in recent months. Authorities have yet to issue an official statement. The cause of the escalation remains unclear, but the region has long been a flashpoint for sectarian tensions. We're once again joined by Shruti Dasgupta to discuss this further. Shruti, yesterday we were reporting on positive news about foreign investment newly in Syria. However, now over 30 people killed in sectarian violence in the country. What is the situation in Syria right now? Do you think that these violence outbreaks that we have seen before quite frequently since the fall of Assad will control themselves? Do you think there is optimism in Syria's future?
I'm very sorry to report that we are no longer looking at a very stable, logical governance in Syria. I had pointed this out when Trump had practically gift-wrapped Syrian regime to al-Shara, who is a known Al-Qaeda terrorist, just by changing a man out of his uniform and putting him in a suit and on the throne does not take away his tendencies and his ideology. And this is exactly being enacted out in Syria month after month. There were 1,300 Christians and Alawites that were killed by the HTS in a similar confrontation. The Druze are not just now in attack, they have been under attack for months by the HTS regime. So this is not a new development. This is an ongoing ethnic cleansing that is being done and hidden under sectarian violence tags. So I don't like what is happening in Syria, and the West is completely complicit in lifting up sanctions and allowing money and trade to flow through the very hands that are stained with the bloods of innocents. So this is something that should have been expected when you hand over a man which holds the gun in one hand and tries to shake the other hand and fill itself with dollars.
Shruti Das-Gupta, thank you very much for joining us on the programme, where your insights are always very much valued. We now move on to East Asia, where 12 Hong Kong pro-democracy activists have appealed their subversion convictions in a landmark case that has sparked global criticism. The case involves 47 activists charged over a 2020 unofficial primary election. They were sentenced up to 10 years in prison, prompting concerns over Beijing's crackdown on dissent. The US and other countries have called the case politically motivated, while Hong Kong officials insisted on a fair trial. The 10-day appeal hearing also includes a government challenge to one acquittal. We're now joined by Jim Rice, who's a professor of international law located in Vigan, the Philippines. Jim, thank you very much for joining us on the program. What are your thoughts on this ongoing case of these pro-democracy activists that have appealed their subversion convictions? What more can you tell us about this case?
Thanks a lot for having me on this. This case is very close to me. As you may know, I lived in Hong Kong for 27 years, and I worked as a professor in Hong Kong for 26 of those years. And during that time, I was involved in the democracy movement. I knew those people. I know them. Some of them are my former students. Some of them are my friends. Some of them are my colleagues. And these individuals are some of the best people that I've ever known. As you correctly pointed out, and again, your lead-in was brilliant, these men and women are being held and have been charged and convicted for essentially organizing primary elections in order to try and get better results at the ballot box, all of which was legal at the time. And it's important to note that in July of 2020, the Chinese government unilaterally imposed what they termed the national security law, which essentially drove a stake right through the rule of law in Hong Kong and created a whole new category of offenses, created a whole new category of law enforcement officials, and created a whole new category of judges. It eliminated jury trial, eliminated bail for defendants, and basically stacked the deck against any defendant who is charged with a national security law violation.
Jim, looking at the legal system here, how do you think for these 47 individuals the pendulum is going to sway in that regard?
Well, again, they're now appealing their convictions. At this point, the Hong Kong judiciary is essentially another arm of the Chinese Communist Party. There's no other, but they're a very well-paid arm of the Chinese Communist Party. There's no other way to really say that. There's no integrity on the Hong Kong bench whatsoever.
Okay, Jim Rice, thank you very much for joining us. You are staying with us to discuss further updates. In a recent development, President Donald Trump confirmed he spoke to FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino amid growing controversy over the Justice Department's handling of the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's death. Speaking to reporters, Trump expressed confidence in Bongino's position. Bongino, a prominent figure in conservative circles, has been at the center of debates surrounding Epstein's alleged clientele and the official ruling of suicide in 2019. Tensions have escalated following a joint memo by the FBI and Justice Department, which dismissed long-standing conspiracy theories about Epstein's death. Meanwhile, Bongino is reportedly clashing with Attorney General Pam Bondi, who had previously pledged to release new revelations about Epstein's case. We are once again joined by Jim Rice to discuss this ongoing situation inside Donald Trump's circle in further detail. Jim, what does President Trump's show of confidence in FBI Director Dan Bongino mean, Deputy Director, mean for the internal rift that's seemingly forming within the US Justice Department?
I think that, thanks again for having me on. I think that what Trump is doing is basically a bad job of putting wallpaper on over a lot of cracks in his administration. I think that this is the most serious, ironically, this is the most serious crisis to have hit Trump world and Donald Trump personally, because all along they have been promising their most hardcore supporters that they were going to release these files, and I don't know what these people were expecting, and I'm not an expert on the Epstein files, but suddenly last week, Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, comes out and reverses her original word, which was that the list was on her desk, the file was on her desk, and she was going to release them, and then suddenly she says, completely contradicting her own words, that there was no list, and that Epstein committed suicide. Obviously, this is a crisis, and it puts Bongino and the director of the FBI in an impossible situation. So I don't know whether Bongino is going to resign, as he said he might, or whether Pam Bondi will be forced to resign herself, or all of them may be forced to resign. But in any case, it's a very, very serious crisis for Trump world, because Trump was the one who was ginning up all of these conspiracy theories for most of his political life. And now, as they say, the dog has caught the bus.
Yes, this seems to be in fact, a bipartisan issue in some ways, unifying both the left and the right, which is obviously not a current occurrence in current times in the United States. However, what legal basis, if any, for Bondi to unseal or release additional material about Epstein's connections, and could it face pushback?
Well, if you're asking, does Bondi have any legal constraints against releasing the Epstein file or releasing the list of names on the file, I can't think of any, actually. Because if there were individuals that Epstein was, in collaboration with, who he knew to be engaged in human trafficking and trafficking in children, obviously this information needs to come to light, and these people need to be prosecuted. And if the list doesn't exist, then they need to show why they've been speaking about this for all of these years and how it came to be that there is no such thing.
Yes.
So
yes.
Either way, they're in serious trouble.
Yes, indeed. We will bring you all the updates of that ongoing situation as it unfolds. Jim, you are staying with us once again. A US Senate report has slammed the Secret Service for multiple failures during last year's assassination attempt on Donald Trump. The report cites a, quote, cascade of security breakdowns at his Pennsylvania rally that nearly cost him his life. 6 agents were suspended, but senators say that's not enough. They criticized the lack of accountability and called for tougher consequences. Secret Service Director Sean Curran says the agency has already implemented key reforms in response to the attack. Now, Jim, no matter how you feel about Donald Trump, or anyone feels about Donald Trump, this was a serious security lapse. What do you think were the most serious lapses here in judgment identified by this Senate report that followed the assassination attempt? We are 1 year on from it now, and some say that it was the turning point in Donald Trump's campaign. What are your thoughts?
Again, you probably know my views about this already, but I believe that, corruption follows Trump wherever he goes. And I think that Trump was able to infect the integrity of the Secret Service, as was disclosed on the January 6th committee, when it came out that, he had been, he later hired as a personal assistant one of the Secret Service agents. So again, I'm not an expert on this shooting, and again, I can't really comment on the issue. Obviously, if there was a shooter perched on a rooftop, some hundreds of yards away, obviously that was a security breach, and they should have caught it.
Yes, indeed. We will now move on to a U.S. foreign policy related development. The United States military has begun a new round of joint exercises with Panama, aimed at protecting the Panama Canal amid growing concerns over Chinese influence in the region. 3 U.S. Army helicopters, including 2 Black Hawks and a Chinook, arrived on Sunday at the Panama Pacific Airport to kick off the drills, which will run through to Friday. Panama's National Aeronaval Service, or CENAN, says the exercises are designed to boost security along the strategic trade route and prepare regional forces for potential threats.
Panamá es un ejercicio que nace con la iniciativa en el año 2002 y se pone en práctica desde el año 2003. A la fecha tenemos 23 años de estar celebrando este ejercicio y busca preparar a nuestras fuerzas como también a países de la región contra cualquier amenaza para la seguridad y defensa del ejercicio bilateral, específicamente con el Comando Sur de los Estados Unidos. Para el día de hoy estamos esperando 3 aeronaves de la Fuerza Tarea Bravo, donde ellos van a realizar entrenamiento con nuestra fuerza pública a partir del día lunes.
The training comes under a bilateral deal that allows the US to use Panamanian bases for joint drills, though not to establish any permanent presence. The deal has sparked protests in Panama amid US President Donald Trump's claim that China holds too much influence over the canal, which handles 40% of US container traffic. In April, Trump demanded free passage for US ships, saying the canal would not exist without America, a claim Panama's President Jose Raul Mulino rejected, stressing the canal's independent governance. We're once again joined by Jim to discuss this further. Jim, what specific threats are these new US-Panama military drills designed to address, and how real is the risk to the Panama Canal right now?
Well, as we know, the Panama Canal is a strategic asset, as it allows both civilian ships and military vessels to cross between the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico and the Pacific Ocean. So it's very strategic. It's a very strategic asset, and we also know that over the past several years, commercial interests from the PRC, from the People's Republic of China, have found their way into Panamanian commercial interests. And I would say that this is a matter of some concern, which I share with the administration. I do believe, however, and this is where I disagree with the administration, that the United States' best interest lies in building up both regional and international alliances rather than alienating them by claiming that they're going to, seize the Panama Canal or make Canada the 51st state or annexing Greenland. And instead we should be building up these multilateral alliances, which are really America's best asset.
Yes, indeed. Jim, we're now going to move on. We've got some breaking news coming in. US Special Envoy Keith Kellogg has arrived in Kiev for high-level talks on security and new sanctions against Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's chief of staff confirmed the visit, calling it a strong signal of US support. Discussions will focus on boosting military aid and tightening pressure on Moscow. The visit comes amid escalating fighting in eastern Ukraine and growing international efforts to hold Russia accountable. We're once again joined by Jim Rice. Jim, how significant is Special Envoy Keith Kellogg's visit to Kiev at this moment in time? And could you tell us a little bit about the views of Keith Kellogg in regards to Russia and Ukraine, and how he is different to other US envoys?
Well, I would say that Kellogg is probably one of the better of the advisors to Trump. At least he is not completely beholden or, in favor of cutting off aid to Ukraine or siding with Putin. So that's one thing. I would also argue that it's been months now since Trump has promised that he was going to impose tougher sanctions on Putin and in Russia in retaliation for the nightly raids on killing civilians on a daily basis in Kiev and other Ukrainian cities. So hopefully Kellogg will get some kind of, dialogue is always good. It's always important to have that going on. And hopefully Kellogg will put pressure on Putin as well.
Yes, indeed. Jim Rice, thank you very much for joining us on the program. We now move on once again. US President Donald Trump will make an unprecedented second state visit to the United Kingdom this September. Buckingham Palace confirmed that King Charles III and Queen Camilla will host the President and First Lady Melania to the UK in September. Well, that is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world. Thank you very much.